All right, so starting off with main idea number two. In main idea number one, we talked about the hairpins, so Indus Valley, the Mauryan Empire, the first empire of India, the Gupta Empire, the second empire of India, and then we'll start here in main idea two from the Mughal Empire. And to talk about the Mughal Empire, we first have to understand that while I mentioned in main idea one, the Gupta Empire promoted Hinduism as the primary religion and essentially the cultural centerpiece of India. Once Babur, right here in blue, so he would be the father of Akbar here, but Babur's Mughal Empire was right here, and then his son Akbar took control of the empire, and you can see what he added was in yellow. So it really expanded under Akbar, but it was this Mughal Empire was established from a Muslim a what's the word a Muslim spin on the Indian subcontinent, right? And then we'll get to Aurangzeb down here in orange. But for now, Mughal Empire, pretty much all of this. So Akbar was one of the greatest one. Essentially, he rules India from 1556 to 1605. Akbar was a conqueror like most military leaders, but he was also a liberal ruler. And I mentioned liberal in the first slide, and liberal here, I mean, trying to see what the society that he's in charge of needs and doing what he can to provide for that. Akbar uses cannons. Cannon usage was just on the forefront here, mainly used in British ships, but Akbar and the Mughals used cannons as well. He named native Indians as officers in the military. Akbar allowed religious freedom, religious tolerance, and abolished a tax on all non-Muslims, mainly Hindus. And you'll see this tax come back into play a few hundred years down the road. But for now, he was abolishing that, trying to not penalize you if you weren't a Muslim. Akbar also allowed all people a chance to serve in high government office, which was a relatively progressive way of ruling. In 15, Akbar's son Jahangir also had a son, Shah Jahan. And Shah Jahan became the successor, and then he tried to, or did, assassinate all competitors for the throne. So what would happen would be after a ruler or a king died, the eldest son would then be put in, or would then take the place of that ruler. And we'll see Shah Jahan's sons. It was kind of a mess, but Shah Jahan's wife died giving birth to their 14th child in 1631. As a memory for her and for his family, Shah Jahan, with the help of the Indian people, built the Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal here, one of the current or new seven wonders of the world. The Taj Mahal essentially is a mausoleum or a tomb for Shah Jahan's wife. You can see the Muslim architecture here with the domes. And here's a picture of the Taj Mahal inside of it. A few days a year, marking the anniversary of Shah Jahan's wife's death. The Indian government allows people into the Taj Mahal free of charge to look upon this giant tomb. So Shah Jahan, the builder of the Taj Mahal, his third son, Aurangzeb, imprisons his father and takes control of the empire. And now that sentence has a lot of explaining about it. So usually the eldest son would take control. And Shah Jahan had four different sons. He had a son named Dara, a son named Murad, and a son named Shah Shahut, in addition to Aurangzeb. So Shah Jahan was getting sick, and when word of this went out to the Indian subcontinent, it became a war among brothers who would be able to fight for control of this newly potential power after their father would pass away. The winner of this turned out to be Aurangzeb. He and his armies defeated all three of his brothers. He came out on top. Dara was the oldest and most likely, essentially, to claim the throne. He lost in battle and was essentially he left India. Aurangzeb had him captured. He sent people after him to find him, had him captured, and had him executed. So there would be no doubt of who was in control, and to establish and instill fear into the people of India. So he would be ruling essentially in a fear type start. The caveat to this is the sons were battling each other because they thought their father was about to die. And yes, he was sick, but his father went on to live another 8 years. And when the Aurangzeb knew that his father was going to keep living, he imprisoned his father, tossed him away, never to be seen or heard from again. Aurangzeb ruled the Mughal Empire, ruled the Indian subcontinent between 1658 and 1707, and he was responsible for expanding the empire to its largest point. So I'm going to run back through here to get you that map. So when Aurangzeb took power from his father and his brothers, it would look like this. The Indian subcontinent and the Mughal power would just be in the yellow and the blue here. And then when he took, Aurangzeb took over, he added essentially the entire subcontinent was under Mughal control. So unlike Akbar, Aurangzeb strictly enforced Islamic law. And in doing so, he attempted to rid India of all hints of Hindu culture. Hindus began to rebel, as you would if you were being persecuted. So think Romans and Christians. Aurangzeb, as a result of this rebellion, tried to suppress it, and he would levy or put taxes on people strictly because they were not Muslim. So if you were a Hindu in the Mughal Empire and Aurangzeb was the ruler, you would be paying taxes that your neighbor would not be, strictly because of religion. Obviously, this created even more rebellion, even more hostility in the subcontinent. The Mughal Empire crumbles. Over 2 million people die of famine while Aurangzeb wages war. He was a conqueror. As you can see, he expanded his empire, but as a result, he neglected the needs of his people, and over 2 million died. The emperor, essentially, Aurangzeb became a figurehead. The empire breaks into several different states, which allowed Britain and your other European countries to kind of take hold of it. Traders arrived from England, Holland, and France, trying to essentially transport the cotton. Indians were able to dye cotton, and that was not available at this time anywhere else in the world. So it became an extremely, extremely valuable resource. And when the empire broke up into several different states, the European traders gained access to several key ports. All right, so after the Mughal Empire disbands, Great Britain begins to take hold. All right, so British rule in 1857 is essentially the entire Indian subcontinent. Right. And at this time, India wasn't the only place on Earth where Britain had a colony. It just happened to be the most profitable of their colonies. So in number 19, British economic interests in India began in the late 1600s. So when the Mughals were still in charge, Aurangzeb even let the Portuguese and the British establish ports in India. Aurangzeb was hoping that it would further empower the Indian culture, make him wealthier, and that was his reason. But in the late 1600s, when the British East India Company set up trading posts at Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta. And what the British East India Company is, we'll dedicate a in-class assignment to this because it is a fascinating concept. Essentially, it is a private company with the blessing of the government. It is essentially people are buying into the British East India Company. It's like a stock. It's like Apple, where you buy into it, and the profits that it would return, you would see some of those profits. Okay, so anyone was able to invest into this company that was established as a trading post in India. It then became like in charge of India. All right. So from 1757 to 1858, the British East India Company was the leading power in India. It was in charge. It had more say than the British government. Even though they worked in tandem, the East India Company was essentially was a private company. And it's funny is the private company had its own army, and it was led by British officers. So think today, like any sort of company having its own army, it's hard to wrap your head around that. But the army was staffed by British officers, and the army was led by British officers and staffed by sepoys, which were Indian soldiers. So they would hire soldiers from India to make sure that people were essentially abiding by the rules that the East India Company had set up. 21, India was called the jewel in the crown during its time under British rule. And the reason for this is because it was the most economically valuable colony that the British had. So crown refers to what the queen essentially, and the jewel is the most impressive aspect of the crown. So that is why India would be called the jewel of the crown. Again, the value comes from different diamonds, but the majority comes from cotton and colored cotton, the ability to dye cotton different colors. It just wasn't available as easily as it was in India. Indian soldiers, sepoys, number 22, they would refuse, or they began to refuse to use new cartridges that the British East India Company had given them, because those cartridges were greased with pork and beef. And these Indian soldiers, these sepoys, were both Hindus and Muslims. In both, and these cartridges greased with pork and beef were against the religious beliefs, because they would have to bite them off. They weren't allowed to, or the religion told them that they could not do that. So they refused. This refusal by these Indian soldiers caused the Sepoy Mutiny. They rebelled against having to do this. As a result, the East India Company jailed many of their soldiers. However, the British government started to get concerned. Hey, is it okay that we have a private company ruling an entire country? They thought no. So 23, the Sepoy Mutiny caused the British government to take direct control of India in 1858. The term Raj refers to the British rule after India came under the British crown. So if you ever hear in passing, the term Raj strictly means after the East India Company, essentially Great Britain took control of the East India Company and control of India. So again, I'm going to read it again. The term Raj refers to the British rule after India came under the British crown during the reign of Queen Victoria. So let's look at a little chart here that we can analyze what led to mutiny. So the rebellion of 1857, essentially the Sepoy Mutiny, was not predicated on a single event. Rather, it was an accumulation of various factors. And again, the beef and pig or pork grease cartridges delivered the final blows that triggered an uprising. So this wasn't something that just set these soldiers off, but it was essentially the needle that broke the camel's back, if you will. All right, so you can see the kind of the description here. This would be the cartridge. The grease was here. Powder, bullet, gun, their new rifles. Soldiers would have to tear open the end of the cartridge with their teeth. Again, they were not supposed to be, according to their religion, to be doing that. And again, the grease was rumored to be derived from beef and pork. It would be loaded up. They had to pour the gunpowder into the muzzle, thrust the bullet still wrapped in the cartridge into it. They would then take the ramrod from the slot beneath the rifle bearer and bring it to the ready, set the target and fire. So essentially that is how they would load their rifles. But the big stink, if you will, was the soldiers, according to their religion, were against biting off the cartridge. And obviously it led to mutiny, and then the British government took control. All right. So the last part of main idea 2 deals with Indian independence. Eventually, Britain would lose control of the subcontinent. So in 1885, the Indian National Congress emerges, and their goal would be to try and quell or stop British rule and establish Indian independence. The Indian National Congress, what you should know about it, it was mostly Hindus. So keep in mind, as we're talking about independence for India, for the next few slides, India, the subcontinent in the 80s and 1800s and 1900s, even today, made up of Hindus and Muslims, 2 very distinct religions. 25, Mahatma Gandhi, he emerged as the leader of the Indian independence. Gandhi's teachings blended all major world religions. He wasn't just focused on one. He would blend them together when he would give his talks, his teachings, his lectures. Gandhi called for boycotts, marches, strikes, demonstrations, all to express his disfavor of the British government. Essentially, he would try to let the British know that you should not be in control of India. India should be in control of itself. But instead of having a warlike mind and background, Gandhi wanted to express his frustrations with the British government through non-violent actions. And he would hope this would catch on with his fellow Indians and leaders in the Indian National Congress. So here's a picture of Gandhi here on the right. And then he has a multitude of quotes that I'm sure you've heard in the past, but one that resonates at any time, anywhere, for any person. He said, "You must be the change you want to see in the world." So what Gandhi is saying here is that if you think something needs to be changed or something needs to be done, don't just stand around and hope. If you are that passionate about something, go make it happen on your own. The world isn't run by people who don't participate. Right? So if you think there is an injustice in the world, Gandhi is saying you are responsible to make sure that injustice is fixed. Right? If you want it to be changed, you need to do it. So, right, personal accountability, personal responsibility. 26, moving toward independence. So as World War II ended, Britain would hand power back over to India. So when you look at the map here, Indian subcontinent, 1947, so just at the tail end of World War II, this is what the Indian subcontinent looked like. Now let's look at the colors here. So green is mostly Buddhist, up here towards China. The yellow is mostly Hindu. So the vast majority of the subcontinent in terms of land mass is Hindu. Purple is mostly Muslim, so Pakistan, Kashmir. And this, again, these are present day boundaries, but it just gives you an idea of the separation between those two religions. So you can obviously think about, well, if they're all of a sudden we're getting independence, we have two distinct religions. Are these two religions going to be okay with one ruling another? And if you answer no, you would be correct. So in the 1940s, from the map we just saw, India had approximately 350 million Hindus, again, right in through here. About 100 million Muslims in through here, and then East Pakistan as well. And having this difference in religion led to bloody conflict and turmoil as Britain partitioned off both Pakistan and India. In all, during this transition of power and where are people going to go? Are they going to go to Pakistan? Are they going to stay in the subcontinent? What if you're Buddhist and you're in the subcontinent and you need to get to Pakistan, to Kashmir? It was essentially a bloody conflict and turmoil. Those are good words for it. So in all, during this time of transition, 1 million people, an estimated 1 million people died. I'm going to read a primary source here, kind of that touches on the stress and the bloodiness, if you will, of this transition. All passengers were forced into compartments like sheep and goats, because of which the heat and suffocating atmosphere was intensified and it was very hard to breathe. In the ladies' compartment, women and children were in terrible condition. Women tried in vain to calm down and comfort their children. If you looked out the window, you could see dead bodies lying in the distance. In many places, you could see corpses piled on top of each other, and yet no one seemed to have any concern. These were the scenes that made your heart bleed, and everybody loudly repented their sins and recited verses asking God's forgiveness. Every moment seemed to be the most terrifying and agonizing. This quote was from Zahara Ahmad Ali on their trip from the subcontinent into Pakistan, essentially the new Muslim country that was created as a result of Indian independence. However, the tensions between Hindus and Muslims, especially over what land is whose, or whose land is whose, still exists today. India, Pakistan, today fight over control of Kashmir. The Muslim Pakistan government thinks that they control the land of Kashmir, and the Hindu-controlled Indian government believes that they are in control of Kashmir. So as you can see from when Guptas came into power in essentially 300 to 500 AD till now, Hindus, Muslims, you can understand the differences between the two, and in how problems that existed 1,500 years ago still exist today. History is a long book that oftentimes references itself, but yet is not finished. Make sure, again, for these lecture slides, you are filling in notes as we go. Please use these as well to study for the India test. The majority of questions you will find on the test come right from these lectures and from the notes.